If this is your first time here, welcome. Every week, we bring the greatest battles and empires in history to life. Hit subscribe so you don't miss what comes next. Before we begin, close your eyes for a moment. Imagine you are standing in a narrow coastal pass. The mountains rise sharply to your left. The sea stretches endlessly to your right. And ahead of you, an army so vast that historians say the ground itself shook beneath their feet. 2 million soldiers, some say more, and between them and the rest of the world, 300 men. This is not a story about winning. This is a story about what 300 human beings were willing to do so that everyone else could live. This is the Battle of Thermopylae. To understand what happened in that narrow pass in 480 BC, you first have to understand the world that created it. Because this story does not begin in Greece. It begins in Persia, the most powerful empire the ancient world had ever seen, stretching from the borders of India to the shores of the Mediterranean, from the frozen steppes of Central Asia to the burning deserts of Egypt. No empire had ever been this large. No king had ever commanded this much power. And sitting at the center of all of it was a man who believed he was a god, Xerxes I, King of Kings, Lord of Lords, the great king of Persia. He inherited the largest empire on earth from his father Darius. And that was not enough. Darius had already tried to crush Greece once. At the Battle of Marathon in 490 BC, the Persians landed on Greek soil with a massive army and were humiliated by a smaller Athenian force. Darius died before he could have his revenge, so the humiliation passed to his son. And Xerxes was not the kind of man who forgot humiliation. He spent 4 years preparing. For years of gathering soldiers from every corner of his empire, Greeks and Egyptians, Babylonians and Indians, Arabs and Ethiopians, the largest multinational army ever assembled in the ancient world. He built 2 bridges of boats across the Hellespont, the strait separating Asia from Europe. When a storm destroyed both bridges before the crossing, Xerxes had the sea itself whipped 300 times as punishment. He had chains thrown into the water to bind the ocean. This was the man coming for Greece. Now look at Greece. Not the unified nation it would one day become, but a fragmented collection of city-states, each with its own laws, its own army, its own ambitions, its own pride. Athens and Sparta barely tolerated each other. Corinth watched its own interests. Thebes was already considering switching sides to save itself. The idea of uniting against Persia was almost laughable. Almost. Because one city-state understood what was coming better than all the others. Athens, specifically, a man named Themistocles, an Athenian politician and strategist, who looked at the Persian invasion force gathering on the horizon and did something extraordinary. He convinced Athens to build a navy, not a small fleet, 200 warships, built by melting down the profits from a silver mine that every Athenian citizen was entitled to as personal income. He convinced them to give it up, to invest it in wood and bronze and pitch, in ships that might save their city. But ships take time, and Xerxes was already moving. The Greeks needed to stop the Persian army somewhere, slow it down, buy time for the fleet to be ready. They needed a place where the Persians' overwhelming numbers meant nothing. A bottleneck, a place so narrow that a small force could hold against a vast one. They found it, a coastal pass on the northeastern edge of Greece, 3 kilometers long, at its narrowest point, barely 15 meters wide, mountains on one side, sea on the other. The locals called it Thermopylae, the hot gates, named for the sulfur springs that bubbled from the earth nearby, the smell of rotten eggs hanging in the warm air. The Greeks would make their stand here, but who would lead it? Sparta. If you know nothing else about the ancient world, you know Sparta, a city-state built entirely around one idea, the creation of the perfect warrior. Spartan boys were taken from their mothers at age 7, placed into a brutal military education system called the Agoge. They slept on reeds they cut themselves. They were deliberately underfed, so they would learn to forage and steal without being caught. They were beaten, hardened, shaped, not into soldiers, into weapons. By the time a Spartan man completed the Agoge, he had spent 23 years being forged into something the ancient world had never seen before. A professional warrior who knew nothing but war, who feared nothing but cowardice, who believed that dying in battle was not a tragedy. It was the highest honor a man could achieve. These were the men who would hold the hot gates. But there was a problem, a serious one. When the Greek city-states gathered to decide who would lead the defense of Thermopylae, they sent an embassy to Sparta. And Sparta said no, not because they were afraid, because of the Carnea, a sacred Spartan religious festival, during which Spartan law strictly forbade military action. To march to war during the Carnea was not just illegal. It was sacrilege. It was unthinkable. And yet, Leonidas did something that bent the rules without breaking them. He was the king of Sparta, one of two kings the city maintained simultaneously. He had the legal right to take his personal bodyguard into the field at any time. His royal guard consisted of 300 men, 300 specifically chosen Spartan warriors, each one selected by Leonidas personally, each one a man who had already fathered a son. Because Leonidas knew what he was asking of them. He was not asking them to fight. He was asking them to die, and he wanted to make sure that when they did, their bloodlines would survive them. So 300 Spartans marched north toward Thermopylae. They were joined by allies along the way, Thespians, Thebans, other Greek city-states sending small contingents. When the dust settled, roughly 7,000 Greeks stood in that narrow pass. 7,000 against 2 million. Leonidas surveyed his position. He walked the ground of the pass himself, measured it, calculated it. The narrowness was everything. In open ground, the Persians would simply surround them. The numbers would be unstoppable. But here, in a pass barely 15 meters wide, only a handful of men could attack at once. The Persians' greatest weapon, their overwhelming numbers, was neutralized. And the Spartans' greatest weapon, their discipline, their shields, their unbreakable formation, was everything. The phalanx, a wall of interlocked shields, overlapping bronze, spears 18 feet long projecting outward from the wall. The deadliest military formation the ancient world had ever developed. In open ground, it could be flanked. In a pass 15 meters wide, it was virtually impenetrable. Leonidas smiled. He had chosen his ground well. Xerxes arrived at Thermopylae and looked at the pass. Then he looked at the Greeks blocking it, and he laughed. He sent a messenger forward. A simple demand: lay down your weapons, surrender, kneel before the great king of Persia, and your lives will be spared. Leonidas sent back 4 words: come and take them. Xerxes stopped laughing. Day 1, August, 480 BC. The temperature in the pass is brutal. The sulfur springs make the air thick and raw. Xerxes waited 4 days before attacking. For days, because he expected the Greeks to look at his army and run. They didn't move. On the 5th day, Xerxes ran out of patience. He sent forward the Medes, elite warriors from the Persian heartland, thousands of them, pouring into the narrow pass. What happened next shocked the entire Persian army watching from the hills. The Greeks retreated. Suddenly, unexpectedly, the Medes surged forward sensing victory, and walked straight into a trap. The Greek retreat was deliberate, a feigned withdrawal, a tactical maneuver that lured the Medes out of position. The phalanx reformed. The spears came forward, and the Medes crashed into a wall of bronze and iron that did not bend, did not give, did not break. The Spartan warriors were not just fighting. They were performing, moving in perfect synchronization, shields interlocked, spears working in rhythmic, deadly coordination, advancing, retreating, reforming, like a machine made of flesh and bronze. The Medes died in extraordinary numbers. Wave after wave broke against the phalanx. Xerxes watched from his throne on the hillside above, and for the first time in his life, he felt something unfamiliar: fear. He sent his best, the Immortals, 10,000 elite Persian warriors who formed the personal guard of the great king himself. Men who had never been defeated, who had never been stopped, who had never seen a defensive line that did not eventually break. They entered the pass with absolute confidence and retreated with the same losses as everyone before them. That night, Xerxes sat in silence. His generals did not know what to say to him. Day 2, same result, different soldiers, same death. The Greeks rotated their units through the pass, resting some while others fought. A system of controlled endurance. The Spartans led every rotation that mattered. By the end of the 2nd day, the Persians had lost thousands of soldiers. The Spartans had lost almost none. Inside the Greek camp that night, Leonidas walked among his men. He knew what the numbers meant. He was not a fool. 7,000 Greeks could not hold forever. Xerxes had an unlimited reserve of soldiers. They could afford to lose 10,000 men a day and still have armies left over. The Greeks could not. What they could do was hold long enough. Long enough for the Greek fleet to assemble. Long enough for Athens to evacuate its civilians. Long enough for Themistocles to position his ships for the Battle of Salamis. Every hour at Thermopylae was buying the future of Greece. Leonidas went to sleep knowing this. Knowing that tomorrow would be different. Because he already knew something he had not yet told his men. His name was Ephialtes, a local Greek man from the mountains above the pass, who came to the Persian camp on the second night with an offer. There was a path, a mountain trail that wound through the hills above Thermopylae, hidden, narrow, known only to locals, and if the Persians used it, they could bypass the pass entirely, come down behind the Greek position, attack from both sides simultaneously. Ephialtes wanted a reward. He got one, and Xerxes sent the Immortals up the mountain trail that night. Leonidas found out at dawn. Greek scouts in the hills had spotted the Persian column moving through the mountain path in darkness. He called his commanders together. The situation was clear. The pass was about to be surrounded. There was only one military decision that made sense. Retreat. Fall back. Regroup. Fight another day. Most of the Greek allies understood this immediately. The Thebans left. The Corinthians left. The Thespians, 700 of them, chose to stay. Not because they were ordered to, because they chose to. And the 300 Spartans were never going to leave. Leonidas dismissed all the remaining allies he could, sent them south with orders to carry the news of what had happened here, to tell Greece what 300 men had held for 2 days, to make sure nobody forgot. Then he turned to his 300, and he spoke to them. The exact words are lost to history. But what we know is this. Every single one of them stayed. Not one man walked away. Day 3, the last day, Xerxes waited until the Immortals had completed their march around the mountain. Then he attacked from both directions simultaneously. The front of the pass and the rear. The Greeks formed a circle, the last formation of a surrounded force. Shields facing outward in every direction. The Spartans fought with their spears until the spears broke. Then with their swords. When the swords broke, they fought with their hands, with their teeth. Ancient sources say that Leonidas was killed early in the final battle, that the Spartans broke formation, the only time they ever broke formation, to retrieve his body, fighting over his corpse to prevent the Persians from taking it. Because to the Spartans, leaving your king's body to the enemy was a disgrace worse than death. They retrieved him, then formed their circle again, and kept fighting. The Persians eventually withdrew their infantry, and Xerxes ordered his archers to simply stand at distance and fill the sky with arrows. An ancient source, Dionysius, was told before the battle that the Persian arrows would be so numerous they would block out the sun. He reportedly smiled and said, "Then we shall fight in the shade." The arrows fell. The last Spartans fell with them. Xerxes walked through the pass after the battle. He found the body of Leonidas, and in a moment that tells you everything about what these 300 men had done to him, he ordered the head cut off and placed on a stake. A Persian king, who commanded 2 million soldiers, so threatened by one dead Spartan, that he desecrated his body in rage. The Persians marched on. They reached Athens and burned it to the ground. The city was empty, because Themistocles had evacuated every civilian before they arrived. And while Athens burned, the Greek fleet waited in the narrow waters of the Straits of Salamis, using the same principle that Leonidas had used at Thermopylae, narrow water, where Persian numbers meant nothing, and Greek discipline meant everything. The Battle of Salamis destroyed the Persian fleet. Xerxes watched it happen from a throne on the shoreline, and then he went home. The invasion was over. Greece survived. Western civilization survived. Because 300 men held a pass for 3 days. Think about what was actually saved at Thermopylae. Not just Greece. The ideas that Greece was carrying. Democracy, philosophy, mathematics, science, theater. The concept that ordinary citizens had the right to govern themselves. These ideas survived because of what happened in a narrow coastal pass in 480 BC. They traveled from Greece to Rome, from Rome to Renaissance Europe, from Renaissance Europe to the founding documents of the United States. Every democracy that exists today carries a thread of DNA that runs back through history to a narrow pass, where the ground smelled of sulfur, where the sea was close enough to hear, and where 300 men looked at 2 million and did not move. A stone epitaph was placed at Thermopylae after the battle, written by the Greek poet Simonides. It reads, "Go tell the Spartans, stranger passing by, that here, obedient to their laws, we lie." 8 words for 300 men. 8 words for the moment that saved the world. Go tell the Spartans. We were here. We held. And the world kept turning because we did.